thanks everybody for joining us. So we're going to spend the next 45 minutes or so talking about connecting the talent development pipeline. So we're happy and delighted to have with us today Dr. Falecia Williams, who's the 9th president of Prince George's Community College, a role she has had since 2020 following more than 2 decades of progressively responsible leadership positions at Falecia College in Orlando, Florida. She is a transformational leader who values learning as much as leading and understands the power of inspiring others. With a proven record of advancing catalytic change in higher education, Dr. Williams demonstrates a covenant to equity and excellence that goes beyond the buzzwords and focuses on helping individuals attain their highest quality of life. Dr. Williams is currently implementing the Prince George's Community College strategic plan and its bold new vision, Dare to be Extraordinary, leading the institution toward exemplary outcomes in student learning, workforce attainment, business partnerships, and community engagement. To know Dr. Williams is to be changed for the better. Her transformational servant approach that meets people where they are is a refreshing reminder that effective leadership has always been more about influence than power. Named one of Washington's most powerful women by Washingtonian, Dr. Williams has been published in the Washington Post and Washington Business Journal for her achievements and is an in-demand keynote speaker throughout the region, so we are delighted to have her today. Dr. Williams.
I feel like the need is to really applaud my communications team and not me. But thank you so much. It really is a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. And I also just want to share, just based upon my bio, you can tell I'm not the subject matter expertise among those who are gathered down here, but I feel so privileged to be able to facilitate that discussion. But we do have a tremendous team that is here with us, and I'm going to invite them to introduce themselves to you before we begin sharing our questions and responses with you.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Khademian. I'm the Executive Director at the Universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, Maryland. We are a regional higher education center in the University System of Maryland.
Hi, my name is Srimaye Peddinti. I'm a senior at Thomas Jefferson High School in Alexandria, and I'm really interested in quantum materials research as well as quantum education.
I'm Alexandra Fuentes. I'm the program manager for STEAM and computer science in Fairfax County Public Schools in Northern Virginia.
Hi, I'm Jessica Rosenberg. I'm faculty of physics and astronomy at George Mason University and director of education for our Quantum Science and Engineering Center.
Hello, my name is Mark Hannum, and I'm the director of the Quantum Information and Optics Research Program at Thomas Jefferson High School, where I have the pleasure of being able to teach quantum mechanics to amazing high school students. And I also was most recently the K-12 program manager for the American Association of Physics Teachers.
Wonderful. We're so glad to have them here with us. And we're going to be talking about the pipelines and this grand science of quantum science and how we begin to ensure that we're prepared for the workers of the future in this field. So, Mark, I'm going to begin with you, if you don't mind. The world is changing extremely quickly. New technologies emerge almost daily. Can you share some current priorities in the national K-12 programs for emerging technologies and how local programs can deliver on these goals?
Sure. I think the best way to look at this is kind of 2 sides, the supply and the demand. The great news is the demand for engaging K-12 students with innovative and developing technologies is incredibly high. You know, everyone is excited. These technologies are becoming part of the everyday vernacular, and the students are very interested in engaging and learning current and exciting science. That also extends to their teachers, that their teachers want to take the things that they're teaching out of the past and bring them forward to the future and make them relevant for their students. So on the supply side, things are looking great. On the demand side, things are looking good. On the supply side, on the K-12 side of kind of top-down approach, it's a little bit harder. And if you look at the National Quantum Initiative, which hopefully gets reauthorized soon, you know, there's not a lot of language in there about helping K-12. There's certainly language on workforce development, absolutely, which is wonderful, but the question is does that trickle down to K-12 in how it works? You look at other programs from the National Science Foundation that are, once again, targeted at workforce development and bringing K-12 students into the fold and into the mix, doing great things, some of them very local here at George Mason, and we can hope that we can pull more of those types of resources in. But beyond those, we also have the rise of a lot of smaller startup companies like Qubit by Qubit, which also came from this area, that is engaging students in both quantum and machine learning, and we're starting to see a very kind of synergistic opportunities here between students and teachers that are very interested, federal government agencies with some trickle down into it, and then local developing programs at universities, but also then small startups that are pushing into K-12 space.
Thank you. In addition to the emerging technologies, education is also undergoing major changes. And any of our educators or panelists, would you like to share with us your experience as well as offer some guidance to us on the ways to encourage faculty to adopt a number of these evolving educational practices and learning models?
Sure, I can start. A lot of what I've done is working with faculty and thinking about how we adopt some of the new models, models for teaching in the classroom. And some of it is about preparing them to use different ways of teaching. In quantum, right, they're getting excited about it in terms of research and bringing that into the classroom. But it's also about, I think, support from administration for these new models is so critical. There's so many things that we're trying to do without that support that's very easy for it to get lost. So I think as we build them, as we realize that getting hands-on in the classroom, getting interactive teaching going to make some of these changes so that students are engaged is really critical. And that's both about introducing faculty to those methods, getting them interested and excited, but also getting the support from administration to actually do that work, which is going to take time and effort on everybody's part.
Yeah, I can add, you heard from Mark Hannum to start, and he's an educator in our system. There are just tremendous educators in our school system, and they are innovators ready to bring the latest technology into the classroom. And what we need in the system is alignment. So we need potentially quantum inside of our standards across the different content areas, and there are frameworks that exist that can support us in doing that. We need resources, so industry professionals who are creating opportunities for students to experience what it means to go into this field. And our partnership with GMU is making that possible for some students, alignment with our university partners to help us update our curriculum. But it's not only for our high school students. There's opportunities that we can bring into the classroom from the earliest ages to spark that interest and create the pathway for students to pursue the careers and their interests.
Let me just ask, do you think the path is clear enough to actually articulate it? Meaning, a year ago when we were here and we were talking about quantum, we said, so what are the ramping disciplines? Do we know that from the perspective of early education, elementary, K-12, community college? I'm a community college administrator in the midst of this, and I know we're wrestling with this, so I'm curious about your perspectives on that, and the adjacent fields as well. What's really the best way? Are we talking about physics? Are we talking about engineering? Are we talking about chemistry, right? What are we talking about?
I guess as a student more than an educator, I can answer from that perspective. Also going back to the other question about what is the right path to go down in the specific classes, I think physics and chemistry are definitely the most relevant classes when it comes to quantum science in general, but definitely computer science classes, some of the more advanced computer science classes that are being implemented in high schools already, and as well as math classes teaching things like matrices and linear algebra, which are necessary to do the computations in quantum, I think are all very relevant. And there are definitely pockets of the curriculum where they can be introduced without having to take away from some of the more relevant parts of the curriculum, whether that be an AP curriculum or a standard county curriculum. So I think that would be my input.
Great, and to build on that, at the earliest ages, I think the concepts that have been laid out are clear enough that we can integrate the key ideas from quantum science very early on. So a very simple example would be superposition. And with social emotional learning, you can have more than one feeling at once. You can entertain this idea of superposition, and then maybe with that conceptual understanding, then students can start to look at the world a little bit differently and embrace some of the weirdness that underlies what we thought was just a clear-cut way forward in our classical physics, and incorporate that into the arts and poetry, and really see themselves as pursuing the field. So it's not clear-cut step by step, but we have enough to begin.
And I'll just add to that, that especially at the earliest stages, I think it's about sparking that excitement, right? We want to get students interested in pursuing whatever comes next. And I think you're right, there's a wide range of pathways that are going to be necessary. It's not, everybody's not going to get their PhD in physics to do this work. And we don't want everybody involved in quantum to be the PhDs, right? There's a growing need for people at all levels, and even in quantum and quantum adjacent fields as well. So where do we get them excited? Where do we make sure that there are access points for all of our students to come in? I mean, we lose so many along the STEM pipeline who sort of get disinterested along the way, and I think it's another tool to get them excited about things that are happening in the field, to get them thinking about the world in a new way, to understand that there are things that they can do that, you know, will make a difference that we don't know the answers to yet. And I think that's really exciting. And hopefully getting them ready to take some of the higher level courses to figure out where they want to go. But you're right, as we get to community college and university, we're still figuring out exactly what those pipelines look like, but I think they're going to draw from a lot of the STEM fields. We know across science and engineering and math are all going to be involved in this work.
So I'll add quickly, I know we have to move on, but I think it's really important that we do things in parallel, that particularly in K-12, we can't focus on just physics. And as much as it pains me as a physicist to say that, we can't. This is purely about equity and access, which is if we only put all our eggs in the physics basket, there's just not enough physics teachers to go around, and there's too many parts of the country that don't have physics teachers. And which means we will leave those students out of the conversation instantly. We have to diversify our approach. We have to make sure that we work with math teachers and chemistry teachers and computer science teachers and physics teachers and art teachers. And we have to integrate this as in many different places as we can, because unless we do that, we will guarantee to not involve people in the process.
I'll just add to that I love the way this is developing. It's interdisciplinary. You got to spark the interest. There has to be some fluidity. I will add that I think educators have to, in higher ed, in community, across higher education, K through 12, we have to get out of our lanes a little bit as well. We can't just sit waiting for students to come from K through 12. We need to be in partnership with the K through 12 teams. We need to be thinking together about what that pathway looks like and just exploring what it could be as well. So just want to add that too, that we've got to get out of our lanes a little bit on this.
I agree. I think you all have made some powerful points, right? This isn't a linear process, and so we really need to be engaged simultaneously in quite a bit of co-requisite design along the pathways. And I think that's another opportunity for us to engage our energy to begin to identify what are those concepts, what are those learning experiences, what are those courses, what are those co-curricular types of experiences even that our students can be experiencing even now. So let's continue. State-based curricular development is very structured. There are benefits and there are challenges to this approach. One impact is that it can take significant time and effort to keep curricula current with new subject matter. What mechanisms could we activate to infuse knowledge in line with the existing curricular structure in K-12 as well as at the undergraduate level?
Okay, one of the side projects that I've been working on was I've been lucky enough to be involved in the Q12 education network. That may not be right. Collaboration project, something. It's an NSF-supported program where, among other things, we have been able to look at the 9 key concepts surrounding QISE and turning them into standards, language that teachers and administrators will understand and recognize. And the point of that wasn't necessarily to generate more work for teachers or more standards that have to be put into K-12 systems, but rather to make links to things that are already there. To say, if you're teaching, in a math class, if you're teaching about a vector, what is a two-dimensional vector? You can say, oh, well, this also can represent a quantum state. Or you're teaching about complex numbers in a pre-calculus class. You can say, oh, well, here's a use case for complex numbers. It's not just the square root of -1. And these are small little pockets that you can trickle in, which is the way around having to change state standards.
And I'll just add to that, we've been working with teachers and starting with the Q12 work, which has been really helpful in structuring what we've been doing, and trying to put some of this to them, is where, here are some ideas about the key concepts in quantum, where does it fit within the things you teach? And working with teachers from elementary all through high school to find some of those touch points where they can include it as a use case. And that's been a really nice way to let teachers start thinking about how they can get it into their curriculum in a way that's not overwhelming and not in conflict with the too much stuff that already exists in trying to teach what they need to teach. I mean, we know there's a lot there right now, and it's really hard to add more. And so getting them involved in that process of finding the connections. I mean, I think that's with some of the work we did with Alex, where some of the social emotional learning connection came out, which was really exciting, and not something I ever would have come up with had somebody asked me where those connections are. So I think the teacher perspective is really important because of the structure of the system and because they're the ones in the classroom.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, I definitely echo the previous statements about kind of incorporating just a mention of quantum wherever it's relevant in science classes, and then you also mentioned in like social emotional learning classes and stuff. And I do think especially at a very young age, like elementary to middle school, when we're still playing games in class and stuff, I think the gamification of certain concepts would definitely be very helpful to people that age, just to prime them or help them understand the very basic concepts, so that they know what they're getting into in further science classes. So I just wanted to say that. You can go ahead.
That's wonderful. This is maybe tangential, leading to one of the future questions around, but if there's anybody in the audience who's connected to industry, there's action that you can take that doesn't require waiting. You could take that action right now, and it's connecting our students with opportunities and connecting our teachers to make those opportunities more available to students, whether that's being a guest speaker, inviting job shadow, or creating internships. So we have a partnership with the Fairfax County Economic Development Authority. It's called Aim High, and one way to get to that is to go to our Fairfax County Public Schools website and search work-based learning. And there, industry partners can reach out to us and create opportunities for students. That doesn't have to wait for a curriculum change. It can happen this school year.
And just to add into that, speaking as a teacher, and I know a lot of the industry partners that are working really hard to develop their technologies are very interested in workforce development and having opportunities for young students to be interns or things like that. And that is certainly an incredibly important process. But I would just like to remind about a simple math, which is you can have one intern come in or two interns come in, but if you bring a teacher that come in, you immediately get the multiplicative effect of teaching all of that teacher's students about what you've done. So you really have 100 interns or 1,000 interns that you've just connected to your company.
And I just, add one more quick thing, which is that just the opportunity to see what's happening in industry is really valuable. We have a whole bunch of our students here who are in a program with us this summer, and one of the things we did was visit local industry who's involved in this space. And that opportunity to find out what's actually happening in quantum can really sort of open their eyes and get them thinking about what comes next in a very different way. And just even that brief connection to what's going on can be really important.
Yeah, Yeah, it's back to getting out of our lanes. You know, industry not waiting for interns to come or hiring people, but industry getting involved early on in the pathway, taking a different perspective. It's a shared responsibility that we have for how we develop this work. And, you know, the experience for teachers, the experience for students, helping think forward about skills development and needs and priorities, investing in scholarships, all of these things I think are part of the ecosystem shift that has to happen in order to support this change.
I just want to echo the idea that Mark shared, one that was very pronounced in my prior institution, which was faculty internships. And so as the summer was a time at the college where we would see a bit of a decrease in terms of our just enrollment there, we actually had faculty do internships, particularly those who had been away from their industries for long periods of time. And they had the opportunity to go, and we paid for this, or we co-paid for this with the industry partner, and to spend the summer back in their industry, because it was always extremely important to make the content relevant. And so I think there's a tremendous opportunity to get to greater scale when we're not only pouring into our students, but we're pouring into those facilitators of learning, because that is going to impact just a larger number of people. So the ways that we can think about those models, I think, are really helpful to us as well. All right, everybody had that look like we're leaning in together here. All right, Srimaye, let's hear a little bit from you. We want to hear about your personal experiences as a student. How has it been participating in our local quantum programs, and how have they prepared you for your next steps? And then finally, what would you advise us to do from a student perspective? Right, we're all ears.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you for the question. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Connected DMV, who's hosting this conference, for providing me with the opportunity to speak amongst these esteemed educational figures. But to answer your question, I think I was fortunate enough to come from the school in an educational environment where I had the resources, the mentors, and the access to learn about the quantum sciences and physical sciences. So through my own initiative or older students or teachers at school, I was able to self-study a little bit of quantum in school, learn about what the applications might look like on paper, or in general, able to take classes on quantum more on the theory side. But it wasn't until the summer immersion program that Dr. Rosenberg mentioned that I really got the chance to talk to people in industry and realize the context societally of what quantum can do. So I think, as you mentioned earlier, seeing the different career opportunities, not only in STEM, but also surprisingly to me in the humanities as well, I think it's been really invaluable to my understanding of what my future career options might be for myself or for any peers that share my interest. And even though I am interested in more scientific research, I'm also interested in quantum education, and I do think that having that interdisciplinary background of quantum has been very, very important and invaluable to my high school experience, as well as having that bigger picture of what my future career in research might look like.
Thank you. Let's hear a bit about how we believe this field will intersect with adult learners. Right? I think we all can think about the pipeline and an uninterrupted pipeline, but we have a large percentage of our residents that have some college, no credential, no degree. We also have a number that don't have anything at all. But I'm wondering how we might make this a strong value proposition to our adult learners in our communities.
I'll take a stab at that. I think we do need to get much more fluid and creative in how we think about higher education options and opportunities. There's already a significant movement in focusing more on skill sets and key credentials of micro-credentials, boot camps that might be available to someone who may not have any college whatsoever, who wants to start at ground zero and get the experience of what that looks like. We're going to have to be better at articulating what the different jobs and opportunities look like across different skill sets as well. So I think in the spirit of being more fluid, being more modular in how we do things, being able to reach the adult learners who are very interested in making a career shift and make it easy for them as well. I think higher education needs to become less of a huge institutional barrier with the FAFSA and all the different challenges to it, and really find ways to be more accessible, more flexible in how we reach a wide range of adult learners, and also help them see a career path as well. Just as it's important for a student, in high school looking to a pathway, adult learners need to be able to see their pathway as well and where that's going to take them and what their opportunities are.
Yeah, and I echo that and say, I think for the adult learners, that's even more critical in a way, right? They need to know where that's going, and I think that's a challenge we have in quantum, right? Identify where those endpoints are that we can actually build out the education required to get them there. And that's going to take partnerships between community college and four-year, between both of those and industry in particular. And that connection is going to be really the industry university connection is going to be what makes that possible, so that we can figure out what those pieces of education are needed to get an adult learner where they need to go for the jobs, both in quantum and in all the quantum adjacent careers that are starting to build up and be a useful pathway for them.
And I think once we have the clarity on what the skills are, maybe it's credentialing that is made more clear, and what exactly does industry need in order to have the qualifications to then join that industry, making it available to people in the community. So we have a really great center, the Workforce Innovation Skills Hub in the Hybla Valley area, which makes the learning around cybersecurity available to community members, and hopefully that clarity that we have on what skills are needed and what credentialing can make those skills known to employers, we could then translate that into apprenticeships for high school students.
Yeah, I was actually going to say something very similar. I think obviously for someone who's an adult learner, there's going to be a lot more of a focus on the practical aspect of getting a job and stuff like that. But from an introductory purpose, it's not so different from introducing it to kids or high school students or adults, because they might be on the same plane of learning in the context of quantum. So to introduce those concepts to them by making the material accessible to everyone in the community, as you said, would be kind of a hitting two birds with one stone kind of thing. Yeah.
Wonderful. So Anne, you have tremendous experience with creating partnerships. Tell us about the types of cross-sector partnerships that you have helped to stand up in education that you think could also serve as models for us in this work.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything we do at Shady Grove, and what I'm hearing from everybody here, it's all about partnerships. It's all about building the ecosystem. And at the universities at Shady Grove, we've been really intentional about these partnerships, and really intentional about thinking that every pathway, whether it's quantum or any other type of discipline, healthcare, whatever it may be, that every pathway has key components to it. It must have a career readiness component, so that any type of learner, adult, younger person, they enter the workforce career ready with the skills of leadership and teamwork and digital literacy, among others. It also, of course, needs to have an educational academic component to it. So they're learning the skills that they need to learn. And there needs to be this employer engagement experiential learning component too. And that should be across the entire way. So at Shady Grove, we're building partnerships around these pieces of the pathway and standing up what we're calling our industry sector hubs, which includes engineering and technology, life sciences and health, public service, business enterprise. And each of those hubs brings together employers from that area, academic partners from that area, as well as our team members who lead around career readiness. And so these partnerships are key to how we're building and designing pathways. The other part of this is just across the ecosystem, we partner with entities like the Kid Museum, which is a maker education learning space in Montgomery County. We do a teacher academy now in the summer with the Kid Museum. We do Invent the Future with the Kid Museum at Shady Grove. So using these partnerships to provide linkages for learners that aren't necessarily in that linear pathway of you go to K through 12, you go to community college, you go on in different aspects of higher ed. But what about that student who's coming out of high school and isn't ready to go on to college and wants to work a little bit and wants to find their way back in? So using partnerships, cross-sector partnerships, to try to build relationships across the ecosystem that create access to educational resources and good careers.
Wonderful. So we talked a little bit about adult learners, but I want to just focus even more broadly on learners in general, because I think the way we learn and the models that we deploy for learning are changing a bit. So we don't always just expect to have someone facilitate information directly to us, right? Many of us really do treat Google as a university, YouTube as a university, right? We're much more engaged in self-directed learning. We're much more inclined to have our own standards for mastery of our learning. And we might be engaged in these informal escapades while we're in a formal program. Wondering how we will ensure, or how should we begin to think about there being sufficient quantum knowledge, quantum information available for those that might engage in these types of informal learning practices, but knowing that it's legitimate and it's useful.
Yeah, I think the internet can be your best friend in terms of like learning and taking different courses online, whether self-paced or taught online. But I do think when you talk about the internet, there's always this looming cloud of like misinformation, especially with the use of quantum like as a buzzword. You see it just like tagged on to like every single thing, and you don't know like what you're really getting into when you see that word anymore. So I think like identifying like the credibility of certain courses or websites online can be really important, and I know that that exists for lots of other subjects, so I don't think that would be an entirely different process for like quantum courses online or self-paced videos or things like that. So obviously like we have to navigate it, and I think it reminds me a little bit of like how AI these days is being like tagged onto everything, but again, we're learning how to navigate like the whole generative AI with ChatGPT and everything. So I do think that history may kind of repeat itself, and we can use the same tools that we did for prior things to kind of encourage legitimate self-paced learning for quantum too.
You know, I just add briefly to that, one of the things we're seeing with students is very much that's where they're going to the internet, and that's where they've gotten a lot of their quantum knowledge. So I think this sort of curation of resources and identification piece will be critical so that people have trusted sources. And there are groups trying to do that. I know IEEE was trying to pull some of that material together, and there are, I think, several other groups that have tried to do that to some extent as well. So I think those will be the places, hopefully, that people will go to find those resources they need.
Just add, the more that we can integrate it into the school day to complement whatever else might be available, the more we increase access and ensure that everybody has a chance to experience what is available, what the career possibilities might be, like, have that spark of what they can do to change the world with these new technologies. So with the work that I lead in computer science and STEAM education, STEM and the arts, there's a significant focus in on students' engineering design solutions and engaging in community and groups and learning in that way too, to complement whatever might be available in the online self-paced learning.
So I have 2 points to add to this. One is, I think, as you mentioned, the different ways that students are learning now, I think the way in which we train teachers also needs to change to adapt to the changing way that students are learning. You know, the idea of the teacher being in charge of the room and disseminating information directly, that needs to evolve. And one of the things that in my current job at TJ that I have had to face, and it's been wonderful because I have great students like Srimaye that forced me to face this, is my job is to get out of her way and to kind of clear a path for her through the bureaucracy and to feed her resources when she needs it, but mostly just to stay out of the way and let her run as fast and as far as she can do on her own. Because if I stood there and tried to teach her things, I would just slow her down. And that is a pivot that I think a lot of teachers need to make as we look to the future. But on the other side of it, I also think that if we're looking at online resources and things, we really need industry input to define what are the skills necessary for those entry-level positions in different areas. Because, for example, if we took the quantum mechanics class that I teach and just converted that to an online course and said, yeah, this is the thing you should do, 90% of it would be useless. We need direction from industry to narrow this down to something that is valuable. Otherwise, people will just waste too much of their time.
I'll just put another spin on all the great things that have been said here. And I think that as learners they are learning differently, we need to go from a heavily institutionalized based education system to a student-centered learning system. And that's not only caring about students and investing in students, it's giving students the agency, letting them practice that agency in a really powerful way and supporting them along the way. And I think that's a transition that's going to be really hard for us to do. We're all used to telling people what to do and knowing what to, as opposed to providing the framework for that maker creativity education to happen.
Wonderful. We want to provide an opportunity for members of our audience to ask a question or two in the time that we have left. Is there anyone? Yes, please stand.
I find in other parts of the country that the teachers in K through 12, for example, have a hard time even learning all the computer technology, let alone moving into quantum technology. How do you see the evolution of computer technology in the K through 12 curriculum evolving in the first place? I mean, much of it is budget constrained. Much of it just takes a lot of time to educate, the teachers.
I think we have a lot of work to do, not only in the quantum fields, quantum information sciences, but also with artificial intelligence and large language models. There's a lot of learning, and then there's a lot of diversity among our teachers and a lot of appetite for that learning and leadership. So we need to tap into the leadership that we have in our teaching force to help expand access and opportunity in that way.
Let me say, too, I think one of the things, I'm going to just go to the higher ed level, is the clarity that eventually will be gained in those endpoints, at those adjacent fields, those near sciences and concepts, I think will be very helpful. Because some of the hesitancy is because of lack of knowledge, just not understanding, it's not clear. So trying to identify the points of engagement for both our college faculty as well as our K-12 teachers, I think will be critically important. And we might find that people are actually more inclined, they're waiting for those measures of clarity. But I do want to also say that investment of administrators to provide the resources, the time for the professional development will also remain critically important. Another question from the room. Don't be shy. Okay. All right. A parting comment or reflection from each of you, if you will. 30 seconds, just speaking to what we're trying to do here with this pipeline.
So in my position in the K-12 world, I think there's a lot of excitement. I think there's a lot of opportunity, and it's a very exciting time to be working with both students and fellow teachers. But there still needs to be a level of coordination that exists between this pipeline. I think this pipeline is a little disjoint along the way, and events like this are the ways to kind of fill in that and make it more uniform.
Yeah, so I mean, there's the excitement, and I think it's really interesting to think about this. I think that from the beginning of K-12 all the way through graduate education, and there's a lot of work to be done as we develop all of that and as we start to figure out what those pipelines are. But we're starting to do it, and part of what we've tried to do, and I think is really important at this stage, is diving in and trying things, because it's the only way we're going to figure out how to fill in that pipeline and know where we need to go. And some of them will work, and some of them we'll have to revise, but without that trying, we're not going to get there.
I would ask for an investment from industry around time or investment around funding. so that we can accelerate what we can do. Right now, we have a lot of work ahead of us. So that's one ask that I would make. And then the parting thought is, our students are incredibly capable. And so the opportunities you create for them will go a long way for our community.
Yeah, I guess my parting words would be that it was great to hear from people with all different backgrounds and different educational careers to see like where the gaps might be and what is currently being worked on in terms of like the National Q12 organization or just like education in general. And I think that although standardization is necessary, as you guys have said, there's a lot of potential for like educational growth and amping that up for places all across the country too.
So I would just say the future is in good hands. and just so impressed by the fantastic work that all of the educators in the panel are doing. I think this is a transformative moment right now as we're looking at ways to transform equity in education, as we're looking at ways to adjust for and correct for the removal of affirmative action as a decision point in higher education. We need to be incredibly creative, incredibly partnered. We can't see ourselves as separate institutional bodies. We have to see ourselves as partners in an ecosystem to make this work. And I think we can do it.
Can I say one more thing? Which is just to say that if you want to see some of the incredible things that these students can do, please do go visit the posters they've made upstairs, because I think you'll be impressed at what high school students are capable of.
Wonderful. Would you join me in thanking our panel for their insights and their expertise that we've shared? And thank you all so much for joining us in this conversation.
Thank you.